Well, from this moment on, we can say directly that the ceasefire in the Middle East is over. The United States Army suffered a disaster in the Middle East today. An American Apache attack helicopter crashed near the Strait of Hormuz. This is the first time an aircraft of this type has been destroyed since the conflict with Iran began, and now Donald Trump has just stated that the helicopter was shot down by Iran, and accordingly, the Americans will be forced to respond to this attack. That means resuming military action. But nevertheless, against this backdrop, Trump also announced the signing of a peace agreement with Iran in the coming days. He also announces a sharp drop in oil prices after the deal is signed. Meanwhile, Israel has once again resumed attacks on Lebanon despite Iran's threats to retaliate, and experts insist that Israel and Iran nearly dragged the US into a major war involving ground forces. But such a risk still remains after Donald Trump essentially stated that yes, it was Iran that shot down their helicopter. Accordingly, the Americans need to respond to this somehow. In general, in this episode, we'll discuss the latest news about the war in the Middle East. My name is Apache. Let's discuss this topic together. But before we start, please subscribe to this channel, give it a like, and leave any comment you like under this video. So today it became known that near the Hormuz Strait, an American AH-64 Apache attack helicopter crashed. This is the first time an aircraft of this type has been destroyed since the conflict with Iran began. The military helicopter crash happened back on Monday, June 8th. And now the investigation into the circumstances of the incident is ongoing. Just a few minutes before this broadcast was recorded, the Americans reported that they are continuing to investigate whether there was a technical malfunction or if the helicopter could have been shot down by Iranian fire. But at the time of recording, Trump stated that the Apache helicopter that crashed in the Strait of Hormuz area was shot down by Iran. The President of the United States added that the United States would be forced to respond to this attack. Here is his quote. "I have just been informed by our great people. The military informed me that last night the Iranians shot down one of our high-tech Apache helicopters which was patrolling over the Strait of Hormuz. There were 2 pilots on board. Both are alive and unharmed. Nevertheless, the United States must respond to this attack as necessary." The American military confirmed that indeed, 2 crew members of the US Army Apache helicopter were safely rescued after the crash off the coast of Oman. This happened after an escalation of hostilities in the region over the past weekend when Iran and Israel exchanged their first direct strikes in months on Sunday evening. So far, the US military has stated that the helicopter crashed while patrolling regional waters. What the US response will be is still unknown. I should note that these helicopters were previously used to strike Iranian small vessels as part of the American blockade of Iranian ports. Let me also remind you that, as of now, the US has officially lost at least 5 fighter jets, 7 Stratotanker refueling planes, a search and rescue helicopter, and more than 24 drones of various types. But I have a feeling that Trump will either respond with something insignificant or won't respond to Iran at all. The thing is, the US president stated today that a ceasefire agreement with Iran could be reached in 2 or 3 days. According to him, despite the recent exchange of strikes between the Islamic Republic and Israel, a settlement is close. Here is his quote. "Thanks to me, they agreed to stop, and now we are at the final stage of what will become a very good deal. The agreement will not allow Iran to obtain nuclear weapons and will lead to the unblocking of the Strait of Hormuz, which will open immediately after the signing. That would be all well and good, but this is at least the 37th case since the beginning of the war in the Middle East." On February 28, when Donald Trump publicly announces an imminent deal with Iran or claims that Iran is seeking to make one. 37 times in 3 months, Trump assured that peace would come to the Middle East as a result of signing an agreement with Iran. But let me remind you, the US president first said this on March 23, assuring that the parties had reached an agreement on almost all issues. The very next day, this same Trump stated that Iran really wants to make a deal, and then said that Tehran is simply begging for this deal. On April 7, the American leader announced a ceasefire, noting that the parties had made significant progress and only needed 2 weeks for a final agreement. During this time, Trump claimed that there were only a few significant differences left. There were very few significant differences remaining. Iran agreed to everything, and we would get a deal in the next 1 or 2 days. However, nothing happened within the time frame he specified. Nevertheless, as early as April 30, Donald Trump once again stated that Iran was dying to make a deal. That's his quote. In May, he attributed the series of failed predictions not to his own mistakes, but to the way the negotiations had gone. The President of the United States noted that America was confident each time that, quote, "we were very close to a deal, but in the end, nothing worked out." Despite all this, Trump assured that this time, this was on May 18th, the situation was completely different. Then, on May 23, 28, and 29, Trump repeated the same points and promised that the deal between the US and Iran would be announced in the near future. And on May 31, Trump said that the parties are very far apart. Trump said that the positions presented to the world and Israel put it at risk with their clashes. At the end of May, Israel did indeed expand its ground operation in Lebanon to fight the Iran-backed terrorist group Hezbollah. Against this backdrop, Tehran threatened to withdraw from the negotiations, and then, after Trump's intervention, the White House announced on June 3 that Israel was ready to cease fire in Lebanon. However, on June 7, the IDF struck a Hezbollah facility in Dahieh, which is near Beirut, and then Iran launched missiles at several military targets in northern Israel, citing its right to self-defense. And Israel carried out a retaliatory strike on military facilities in the western and central parts of the Islamic Republic of Iran. And on June 9, Trump repeated for the 37th time that a deal with Iran is almost ready. And then he comes out and says, "Listen, the Iranians shot down our helicopter. We need to respond somehow." And against this backdrop, Washington is now blaming Israel for all its failures. Let's be honest, after 100 days, by the way, 100 days since the conflict began, Trump still hasn't managed to reach a ceasefire agreement, and for the last 24 hours he's been doing everything he can to prevent the full-scale resumption of the war. Trump found himself in a difficult position. On one hand, he understood that it would be almost impossible for his key ally, Benjamin Netanyahu, not to respond to Iran's missile strike. On the other hand, he was afraid that retaliatory measures would lead to a full-scale conflict. Trump even threatened the Israeli Prime Minister that he would leave Israel alone with Iran. Moreover, as it became known today, on Sunday evening, Trump called Netanyahu and asked him not to take retaliatory measures and not to attack Iran. Trump claimed that either he would make a deal with Iran within a few days, which would make the strikes simply unnecessary, or he wouldn't, and in that case, he himself would lead the strikes against Iran. Netanyahu assured Trump that he wouldn't make any deal anyway, and that staying silent in response to an attack would mean showing weakness. So, after meeting with the head of the security service and the commanders of the Israel Defense Forces, Netanyahu informed the White House of his decision to begin carrying out strikes. Subsequently, Iran and Israel eventually stopped their mutual attacks, but Israel continued its attacks on Lebanon. And now it is already becoming obvious that the deal between the US and Iran has once again failed. But here comes the news that, if confirmed, will seriously undermine Donald Trump's reputation. He criticized Barack Obama for allegedly, as he said, bringing cash on pallets to the Iranians so that they would sign the nuclear deal with him in 2015. So, an agency linked to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps reports that the US paid Iran $3 billion in cash to stop the attacks on Israel, and that this money was actually delivered to Tehran. Moreover, at first the cash was delivered to Abu Dhabi, actual physical cash, and then it was delivered to Tehran. And if this information is confirmed, then I don't know how Trump will get out of this. Meanwhile, what does Trump do? For the 37th time, he repeats the following, quote, "Iran wants to make a deal, and it will be signed soon. This will stop Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons and halt uranium enrichment. It's a phenomenal deal. We will get everything we wanted." I'll leave it at that for now. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. If you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, you can do so financially with any donation using the links and details in the description of this video. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.